my family or starting a tech company. Now they beg me to save the sister they chose. Hi, my name's Evelyn, and when my sister got promoted, my parents threw a party with champagne and a toast. But when I launched my own company, they cut me off. They said I was embarrassing the family. Now she's jobless. I'm a cybersecurity engineering. Suddenly they remember I exist. But it wasn't the silence that hurt most. It was the years they erased me from family photos and now want me to save the daughter they called perfect. Before we dive in, what would you have done if the people who disowned you came begging for help? Tell me in the comments. Let's begin. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. The text from Mom just said, "Family dinner at 6 p.m. Try not to be late." Okay. No explanation, no context. But it was Mom, so I threw on something decent, scraped my hair into a bun, and drove the half hour from my tiny rental in North Seattle to their place like I always did, still trying, still hoping their house was glowing when I pulled up. Cars packed the driveway. It was loud, cheerful. Laughter spilled from the windows. I clenched my couches, bracing for the family's stinging of being overlooked. When I walked in, nobody looked up. The dining table was dressed to impress. Linen napkins, champagne flutes, a flower arrangement big enough to block half the view. I stood near the archway while everyone lifted their glasses. Dad at the head of the table, his voice booming like some kind of Southern senator. "We're just so proud of the legacy Clara's building," he said. "She's everything we hoped our daughter would be." Everyone clapped. Someone even whistled. I stood there holding my purse, still in my coat. No one said my name, not once. I sat at the far end near the door to the patio, nodding at an aunt who gave me a tight-lipped smile. Clara was radiant in a blue sheath dress, hair curled just right. She laughed like she'd rehearsed it. My mom leaned over, brushing something off her shoulder, whispering, and I just listened. There was a toast. There were two, actually, in a slideshow. Every photo Clara in college, at work, at some conference in NYC, standing next to a man in a suit who looked like he invented Congress. There were no pictures of me, not one. Even on the hallway wall, where once a photo of me at the Redwood car show used to hang, there was now a framed article about Clara's promotion at her agency. The photo was gone, painted over, maybe. I excused myself early, told them I had a shift in the morning, which was true. I was still doing freelance coding, part-time tech support, and every weekend learning how to integrate AI algorithms into user interface. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. On the way out, Dad patted my shoulder absently and said, "Don't forget to turn off the porch light." Like I still lived there, like I was just passing through the house I grew up in, where my name had become relayed. 2 days later, I came back, not for dinner. I came back because I thought they deserved to know what I'd been working on. Clara got a promotion. I had a plan. Maybe not a corner office or a LinkedIn headline, but something I built from scratch with code on my screen and YouTube on my door. Mom was at the breakfast nook with her tablet. Dad sat across from her with the paper. I stood between them, holding my laptop. My hands shook a little, but I kept my voice steady. "I've been working on a business selling solutions AI-driven apps. I filed the LLC, I've got a beta version in, and I'm applying for a tech grant. I wanted you to hear it from me first." Silence. Then Mom chuckled. "Oh, sweetie. You're serious?" Dad didn't even look up. "This is what you've been working toward?" My throat dried up. I tried again. "It's a real thing. I've been learning nonstop. The code's there. It's practical. People want this." Mom waved her hand. "Evelyn, darling, we hoped you'd do something respectable." Respectable? Like Clara, who made ad campaigns about cereal boxes and beauty products while I was trying to reinvent what a user experience could feel like after hours of interaction. I was stunned. But I stayed. I asked questions. I asked what they thought could be better about my pitch, how I could improve. Dad finally folded his paper and looked at me with a sigh. "If you go through with this," he said, "don't expect to come back asking for help. We can't carry someone who refuses to grow up. We already have one daughter we're proud of." I left without another word. The sun had just dipped under the skyline as I stepped outside. I sat in my SUV, stealing at the laptop bag its zippy worn from countless nights of coding through doubt. I got in my SUV and gripped the wheel tight, my jaw clenched, my hands cold against the cracked leather steering. The house stood quiet behind me. No one followed. No one called out. On the seat beside me was the laptop bag holding my beta app. A sense of city life I'd sensed. It was still warm from my lap. I hadn't even asked to see it. I didn't know it yet, but that night I became someone they'd later pretend to recognize. 8 years. That's how long it took for the silence to break. The text came out of nowhere. Would love to see you, sweetheart. Family dinner, Saturday. Same house, same tone, as if none of it had ever happened. Message felt like a hook disguised as an olive branch, pulling me back to a place I'd fought to leave. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the cedar tree in the front yard had grown so wild it cast shadows across the porch like broken ribs. They'd repainted the house blue, with white shutters. Now, not the warm cream, I remembered. The new color felt like a mask hiding the years they'd erased me from their store. Inside, Mom gave me a hug that didn't land right. Dad nodded like I was a neighbor dropping off borrowed tools. Their welcome was a performance but unspontaneous possible, like a script they'd rehearsed. The air was tight, but what caught me wasn't the smell. It was the wall, the hallway, the one we used to pose in front of on birthdays, the one lined with photos of first recital, weekend hikes, that trip to Oregon coast where Clara got sunburned so bad she couldn't walk. Now it was just her. New frames, white, sleek, cropped tight, Clara in a blazer, Clara laughing in front of some podium. I looked for the photo of me from senior year standing next to my beat-up Honda with a wrench in hand. Gone. The empty space on the wall was a silent accusation, proof I'd been written out of their legacy. Even ghosts leave more trace than I did. Dinner was civil, polite. Overcooked salmon, quinoa, steamed asparagus. The meal was a distraction, a prompt to keep the conversation from cutting too deep. Dad talked about local property taxes like it was small talk. I listened, nodding, smiling when appropriate. My phone buzzed in my pocket, my assistant reminding me of a code review in the morning. After dessert, I left early again. No hugs this time, just a drive safe from Dad. By the time I got back to my office, the sun had dipped behind the buildings, turning the glass walls golden. My office lights kicked on automatically as I walked in. The space felt like a sanctuary, built from my own birth. Below it, a magazine, my face on the cover, headline, "From Disowned to Tech Powerhouse." But I wasn't smiling in the picture, and I didn't smile now. The headline was a triumph, but the recent that I had worked for the coffee my assistant had left earlier. Still warm, steam rising. She always remembered the almond milk. And just like that, I remembered all of it. Those nights coding in the back of a borrowed office, the mornings mowing at an old tech shop, pretending I didn't hear the guys laugh when they saw me taking notes. The way I used to park 3 blocks from tech stores so Dad wouldn't see me buying cheap cables. It didn't matter. Once he did, he walked right past me and icily ate. I was comparing circuits. He looked me straight in the face and kept walking like I was invisible, like I'd never existed. I worked harder that week than I ever had in my life. That version of me, sleep-deprived, broke, running on gas station coffee and spite, she built this. Not for revenge, not for applause, just to survive. Now here I was, my name on patents, my designs in tech contracts across 5 states. And now they call. It started with another dinner, Mom insisted. Just casual, no pressure. They asked polite questions, I gave polite answers. Then she said it quietly, like it was a favor. Like it didn't cost her a thing. Clara's in between jobs right now. Her firm downsized 5 months now. She's trying, of course. You know how competitive the market is these days. I nodded, sipped water. Their words were a calculated plea, masking their need for my success, to protect me from myself to myself at leisure. The gall of it still burned. She's looking, Mom added. But it's hard. Really hard. And well, your company's doing so well. We thought maybe there's a way you could help her get back on her feet. I set my fork down. My hand didn't tremble. I looked at Mom. Her expression was soft, practiced. The photo wall flashed through my mind, and just like that, they remembered I existed. I didn't respond right away. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my work pants and the blouse I'd tossed on that morning without thinking. My husband, James, was brushing his teeth. I stared at the text on my phone, its words a thin veil over their true intent. Control high, sweetheart. I'd love to see you. Just to talk. Dinner? No emojis, no requests, no explanations. I tilted the screen toward James without saying anything. He glanced at it, toothbrush still in his mouth, raised an eyebrow. Huh? That's new. Too new, I said. He rinsed, spat, and leaned on the bathroom counter. You going? I don't know. James didn't push. He never did. He just shrugged and said, just go in with your eyes open. His words were a quiet anchor, reminding me to trust my own judgment. It wasn't the words themselves. It was what wasn't being said. We met at a restaurant off Pine Street, somewhere neutral, not their house, not mine, just a place in between, a place that made it feel less personal. The private room had one window and too much candlelight. Alice wore lavender. Robert had on one of those quarter zips that always looked like he played tennis, even though I'd never seen him hold a racket. They both stood when I walked in, smiled. Mom hugged me with both arms. Dad touched my shoulder like he remembered where it was. I sat. I asked about my company, about the new office in Bellevue, about how many people were on the team. Now you've built something really impressive, Robert said, letting the words sit like it had taken effort. I've had help, I replied. No one builds alone. My tone carried a sharp edge, a reminder that their support had never been part of my foundation. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. I could feel them choosing their words carefully, as if we were all aware there was glass under the table. The waitress brought dessert. Robert asked for decaf. Alice folded her napkin 3 times before she spoke again. You know, Clara hasn't been herself lately. There it was, not even 4 minutes after the chocolate mousse hit the table. I didn't say anything, just waited. She's struggling after the layoff. It's been hard. She's not applying like she should. Her confidence is low. She's been through a lot, Robert added. I looked between them. Losing a job's tough, I remember. Allies smiled soft. Yes, but this has really knocked her down. She's been talking less. She doesn't even go out anymore. She's lost her sense of purpose, Robert chimed in. It's like she doesn't know where to go from here. Then the pivot came. With all you've built, Alice began, reaching gently across the table. Maybe you could help her find that purpose again. I let her hand rest near mine. Didn't move. How exactly would I do that? I asked, careful to keep my tone even. Well, maybe she could work with you, she said too quickly. Marketing, she's so good with people, always has been. She's personable, Robert added, knows how to light up a room. I tilted my head. I'm sure she does. Alice leaned in slightly. And it would be good for both of you to reconnect, to rebuild something. There it was again. That word, rebuild. Like the structure had once been whole. Like I hadn't spent years scavenging for bricks just to stay upright. They kept talking. Family sticks together. She just needs a chance. You forgave us by becoming who you are now. That's what matters, right? I let them keep going. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react. The people's revenge was the mirror image of my desire to rewrite history, but with Bedham, their daughters, to be close again. Not for our sake, but because it looked better on paper. Because silence in a family photo hurts more when someone else is watching. The waitress brought the check. I reached for my purse. Robert stopped me. I've got it, he said, already handing over his card. Our treat, our treat. He hadn't paid for a single thing of mine since I was 24. We walked out into the parking lot. The sky was that soft blue-black that meant summer was coming. I drove home alone, their words echoing like a loop of code. I couldn't still. They hugged me goodbye both at once. Alice looked up at me and said, "Just think about it, sweetheart. You're in a position to make things right." I watched them walk to their car, their pace slower than I remembered. I stood still for a moment before walking to my own. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for staying silent. By the time I got home from that dinner, the silence inside me had turned into something sturdier than peace. It was a wall I built, brick by brick, to shield my future from their path. I took a shower, folded my coat over the arm of the sofa, and left my phone face down on the counter. Morning came. I made coffee, sat down at my desk in my home office. The window cracked just enough to hear the birds fight over summer. I wasn't expecting anything important in my inbox, just reports, updates, logistics. That's why the subject line hit me like it did. Family comes first, or your child will pay. The sender was hidden. No reply address, no footer, nothing, just one line in the body. You'll pay for what you're doing to your family, but not alone. Your child suffer too. I stared at the screen so long the letters started to blur. My hands didn't move. My chest did tight and fast, but my fingers froze on the mouse. I read it again and again. Then I stood up, left the room, didn't even close the laptop, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the closed toilet lid, trying to breathe like James had taught me during labor. Slow in, hold, slow out. They didn't sign it. Of course they didn't. But I knew. You don't need a signature to recognize the tone of a family that sharpens their knives with guilt. By noon, my body had settled, but my mind hadn't. I hadn't told James yet. Not because I was afraid of his reaction, but because I didn't want him to look at me the way he did when I let them get too close, when he thought I should have known better. I scrolled through the other emails, pitches, orders, then a message from my cousin Lucia, the one who always played neutral. "Hey, just heard through Aunt Maggie that you refused to help Clara. That true? They're saying you're punishing her, that you've always been jealous. Jealous? Jealous of the girl who got every photo, every birthday spotlight, every unearned second chance?" I didn't reply to Lucia. Didn't need to. I clicked into a folder on my drive, and I'd labeled years ago when I first started putting things away just in case. Screenshots, voicemails, a transcript of the night my dad told me if I went through with starting my business, I wouldn't be welcome at home again. I'd kept it all quietly, not to use, just to remember I wasn't crazy. That evening, I had an event to attend, the Pacific Tech Gala, one of those regional awards nights where everyone wore dark-colored dresses with expensive shoes they could barely walk in. I didn't want to go, but I'd already committed, and my company was one of the sponsors. James drove. He stayed in the lobby with a client while I checked in. The woman at the front desk smiled brightly when I gave my name and handed me a packet. Inside was a program, table assignment, keynote speakers. I didn't expect an award. I wasn't on the list, but then the host stepped on stage. "And now," he said, "the 2025 Innovation Leadership Award goes to Clara Harris." My head snapped up. There was a pause. Not applause. Not yet. The room hesitated. The name felt off, like someone had missed a page. But then I saw her. Clara walked up from a table near the front, heels clicking, smile fixed, hair curled just right. She accepted the plaque with both hands, nodded, and took the mic. "I'm honored," she said. "This recognition means so much. My journey in some way hasn't been traditional, but it's been shaped by the people who believed in me. My family, my sister. She's always been an inspiration. I couldn't move. That plaque was meant for me. My company had donated the venue decor, my team had pitched the award structure 3 years ago, but my name somehow had been swapped. The program didn't list her. She wasn't even a nominee. I sat there, breathing through my teeth. They didn't just forget me, I thought. They replaced me in public with cameras, with sponsors, with half the damn industry watching. The car ride home was silent. Jameis kept glancing over but didn't say much. At a stoplight, he finally asked, "Do you want me to pull over?" "No," I said. "Keep driving. I saw what happened." "I know. You want to talk about it?" "No. Not because I couldn't, but because if I started, I might never stop." By the time we got home, the night air had gone cold. I went straight upstairs, kicked off my heels, and opened the laptop. There it was, the folder labeled "For When They Pushed Too Far." I clicked it open, scanned the files, labeled, dated, backed up. Then I started uploading. Not to social media, not yet, but to a private drive I shared only with one attorney. The one I had coffee with after Clara stole my pitch to win a startup grant 2 years ago. Back then, I hadn't pressed charges. I hadn't even confronted her. I told myself the win didn't matter if I kept building. But this was theft. And not just of an idea. It was the theft of my name, my narrative, my damn life. And I wasn't going to let it happen again. I had warned them in silence. Now I'd speak with proof. After I hit upload, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the kitchen, elbows on the table, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the house settling. James had long gone to sleep upstairs, but I couldn't bring myself to join him. My body was tired, swollen. 7 months into carrying a child I prayed would never know this kind of war. I held my belly, whispering to my unborn child that they'd inherit my strength, not their shame. I rubbed the curve of my belly with both palms and whispered out loud, "Maybe it's not about revenge anymore. Maybe it's just about ending the noise before you hear it too." The next morning, I couldn't concentrate on emails or meetings. My assistant rescheduled a call. I wasn't up for pretending. By late afternoon, I found myself in the garage, or what used to be one. These days, it was my coding studio, my refuge. Still, there was one corner I hadn't touched in a long time. Dust lined the shelves. Old cables sagged on their hooks. I pulled a step stool and reached for a bin high up on the rack. It was labeled 2017 in faded Sharpie. The lid creaked when I opened it, and the scent of solder and plastic hit me like a time capsule cracking open. Beneath old circuit boards and a brittle notebook was the first Beta Appa Icrido Minorai inner way into the wall of a pretty bedroom room. A Cirque Morgan J, with a Britalis Sir code on one corner from a Cirque failure that had sparked mid-test, the kind of Appa Ipa no one in their right mind would lunch. But I had brought it to my parents' kitchen table 6 years ago like it was the Holy Grail. I could still hear their voices. "This? You're walking away from a steady paycheck for this?" my father said, not even looking up from his phone. My mother barely masked her disapproval. "You've always liked tinkering, but business, that's Clara's world, honey." I ran my thumb along the code. I'd stayed up all night perfect. Every line was a memory. Every error a reminder that I started with nothing but belief. And they laughed. This wasn't just a BAPP. It was the night I stood up and they sat down. 2 days later, I had a baby shower to attend. My own. My best friend, Elena, insisted on throwing it, even though I'd tried to keep things small. We settled on a cozy venue, a little tech cafe in downtown Seattle that smelled like espresso and new gadgets. The space hummed with warmth, a stark I know concept contrast to the coldness I left behind. Close friends from my team came, a few neighbors. Ellen brought lemon bars and lavender tea. I was halfway through opening a set of swaddle blankets when I heard the bell over the front door chime. I looked up. Clara. She stood there in a sleek cream blouse holding a tiny gift bag with a cartoon giraffe on it. And right behind her, Ellis and Rose. It was as if someone had hit a mute button on the whole room. The air turned dense, conversations froze. Elena blinked twice, caught off guard. She looked at me for direction, but I was too stunned to give any. Alice made her way toward me with a practiced smile and leaned in to kiss my cheek like this was some kind of holiday truth. "We're here to make peace," she said gently. Clara followed close behind. "It's nothing big," she said, lifting the bag. Just something for the baby. I didn't take it. I didn't say anything. I just stood. My knees didn't crack. My silence was a shield from years of. I turned toward the small crowd of friends who'd gathered for love, not leverage. Thank you, I said, voice steady. Thank you all for coming. It means more than I can say. I turned back to my parents. And I'd like to ask my family to leave. Alice blinked. What? You've made your feelings about my life clear. You've made your lies public. I'm drawing a line right here, right now. Hella leaned in. Come on, Evangeline. Don't make a scene. Just take the gift. I looked her in the eyes and said, calm and low, this baby will never inherit shame disguised as love. The room held its breath, then Alina stepped up beside me. You heard her, she said, her voice like a bouncer's in heels. It was Alice who blinked first. She took Robert's arm and turned. Clara hesitated, then followed. The door closed behind them. Conversation slowly resumed. Friends reached for scones and mugs and tried to make things feel normal again. But normal had never looked this clean. That night, back home, I sat in the garage again. The Beta app still sat on the bench. I took a photo of it under the work lamp, crash log and all. Then I opened my company's social page, captioned the post. This was the night they laughed. This is what I built from it. I hit publish, and somewhere across town, they were probably crafting their own version. But while I posted truth, they posted lies. I didn't even make it to the kitchen before the storm hit. Jane was still asleep upstairs when my phone buzzed off the nightstand. Then again. I picked it up, blurty, still wearing the same sweatshirt from the night before. A dozen notifications. Then hundreds, tags, shares, messages. The first thing I saw was Clara's face, tear-streaked, framed in soft light, her voice gentle, broken. The video thumbnail read, "When helping family means losing them," I pressed play. I never thought I'd have to say this publicly, she said, but people need to know the truth. Years ago, when my little sister was struggling to find direction, I offered her my notes, my sketches, my time. I never asked for anything in return. But success can change people. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I just wanted her to have a shot. I didn't think she'd erase me. By the time the video ended, my name was trending in all the wrong ways. Comment after comment spilled across my screen like poison. You climbed on your sister's back and now act like she never existed? Classic ungrateful sibling story. Bet she thinks $10 million, 0 cents buys integrity, and the one that stopped my breath for a second. We know who the real money laughs engine should have been. I dropped the phone on the counter. The baby kicked hard inside me. I instinctively held my belly with one hand and braced myself against the countertop with the other. It wasn't just a lie. It was a public rebranding. She didn't just rewrite history, she sold it. An hour later, I was in my home office, laptop open, eyes dry but burning. The worst part wasn't even the video, it was the attachments she'd shared. Scans of sketches, product concepts with crude lines and sticky notes, ones I instantly recognized because they were mine. She'd taken them from an old flash drive I used to keep in my bag, the one she borrowed during a lunch visit 7 years ago, saying she wanted to look at the structure of the app I was building. I never saw the flash drive again. Now she had turned pieces of that stolen past into evidence, polished it with a sob story, and offered it to the world like a sacrifice on an altar of fake humility. And the public, they ate it up. I called my attorney. Linda didn't even greet me with hello. I saw it, she said. We've got everything ready. Do you want to proceed? Yes, I said, then paused. No, not just that. I want something stronger than a cease and desist. Defamation suit? Maybe. But first, I want the truth to hit harder than her fiction. Linda sighed through the speaker. We'll back you on whatever you decide, but make sure this isn't coming from emotion. I opened my secured folder. Inside, company registrations, trade map applications, timestamp development logs, receipts from materials dating back 7 years. And the kicker? An internal podcast clip from 2020, where Clara, speaking casually at a networking brunch, said, Eve. Oh yeah. She's doing that tech thing. Cute stuff, not really my lane. I found the clip, saved it, then I opened a new folder, titled it, The Real Timeline. Back at the office later that day, I kept quiet. I didn't hold a staff meeting, didn't make any social media statements. I walked through my building, nodded to the receptionist, and headed straight to the media team floor. Amber, our content lead, looked up from her desk. "We saw the video," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "Do you want us to respond?" I shook my head. "Not yet." I went to the edit bay, closed the door, pulled up raw footage, the kind no one ever sees, clips of me coding in the early days, audio files of brainstorming sessions with my first intern, delivery receipts for the first 5 beta release to local clients. Every timestamp was there, every story backed by verifiable data. I layered them together, cut in Clara's podcast line, overlaid it with my own voice, calm and direct. Not everything behind closed doors needs to stay silent, but if they want a story, I'll give them the full one. I hit save, name the file, the real timeline, MP4, then close the laptop, and just as I reached for my tea, the receptionist buzzed my desk. "Hi, Miss Harris. A courier just dropped off a letter. Says it's from the law offices of Smith & Jones." I blinked. That was Clara's legal team. I hadn't even posted yet, and already they were trying to shut me up. And the envelope was thick, off-lane, and too formal to be anything casual. It arrived mid-morning, slid quietly under the office door by a courier who didn't even wait for a signature. I stood there staring at it, coffee still in one hand. The letter felt like a preemptive strike, a warning to stay silent before I could speak. Inside, a letter from Clara's attorneys. Linda read it silently while I paced. Her expression barely shifted, except for the slight twitch of her eyebrow. When she finished, she placed it on my desk like it was a cheap receipt. "Well," she said, dry as ever. "That's some creative fiction." I sat across from her, waiting. "She's accusing you of defamation, false attribution, claims she helped design the initial product line, and wants you to remove all digital content mentioning her." I blinked. "So, she's doubling down?" "Oh, she's tripling." Linda leaned forward, almost amused. "It's bluster. There's no real claim unless you let it sit unchallenged." I let out a long breath. "We won't." She nodded. "But we won't answer clearly." That night, while going through my old external drive backups, mostly out of rage, I found a scanned PDF labeled Contributor Agreement Clara. I stared at it for a second, then opened it, and there it was, a contract I'd forgotten I even had. Signed years ago, back when I was still operating from the garage and trying to be careful, even with family. I had asked her to sign a contributor release when she'd claimed she had a few ideas and wanted to feel involved. She hadn't contributed anything, of course, but Linda had told me back then, document it anyway. There it was, plain as day. Her name, her signature, dated, witnessed. And this line: "The contributor waives any and all claims, current or future, to product design, intellectual property, brand equity, and financial interest in the company or its successors." I forwarded it to Linda that same night. Her reply? Bulletproof. By Friday morning, the video was live. I didn't narrate it with fury. I didn't even speak much. The first half was just quiet, time-stamped footage. Me coding a beta app in a dimly lit garage, a spreadsheet tracking expenses, emails to suppliers with my name in the footer, legal documents, her podcast, calling my company that tech. The second half was the contract highlighted signed. I ended it with one line in white over a black screen. "Truth doesn't shout, it just waits." I closed my laptop and left the office. I didn't check social media. I didn't have to. But I didn't have to. My phone had 30 missed texts, so half of them from numbers I hadn't seen in years. One from my cousin Sophia. "I saw your video. Wow, I had no idea. You were right, another from my uncle. I always liked you. I'm sorry we didn't ask questions." Some just sent heart emojis, others were silent. My father didn't write. Alice didn't call. But the family group chat, which I hadn't opened in over a year, was suddenly buzzing with activity. Some defended Clara, some said I had gone too far. My Aunt Margaret messaged me privately. "They're furious, but Clara needed to be humbled." "You didn't lie. You just finally told the whole truth. I didn't reply. The truth was my final word, not a date to be won. The next morning, Clara posted again. Hair loose, eyes red but dry, voice low. I never read what I signed, she said. I was just trying to be a supportive sister. I thought we were family. I guess some people take advantage of that. I watched the whole 6-minute video in silence. No direct denial, no apology either, just calculated heartbreak designed to divide sympathy and paint me as opportunistic. And it worked for some. The internet fractured like glass. Some called her manipulative. Others said I was cold. A local columnist wrote, "Sister versus sister. Who owns legacy in the age of tech?" I turned off the notifications. I did fought for my name, not for their Apple law. And that was enough. Later that day, I told Linda to proceed with a public cease and desist clarification, just to make sure the facts were on paper. But I didn't want to sue, not yet. Not unless she kept pushing. Sometimes, I told Linda, peace means letting go of people who will never understand you. She gave a small nod. That evening, as twilight settled over the city and our building cast long shadows on the sidewalk, I sat in the executive lounge and drafted an invitation. Launch party, private event, a new division, press invited, investors intending, and Clara. Her name wasn't on the list. This time, the lights would shine on the one who actually built the stage. The morning of the launch, Bellevue was drenched in soft golden light. The air crackled with the promise of a new chapter I'd written myself. I arrived at the venue 3 hours before the event. Downtown, tucked between a restored warehouse and a local co-op, the space buzzed with quiet motion, lights being adjusted, sound checks clicking through speakers, staff rolling out linens in company colors. The event team greeted me with polite warmth, all rehearsed and practiced, but kind. My team had prepared everything. My name was on every placard. The RSV list sat on a tablet by the check-in station. I scanned the names quickly. Alice Absurdis, absent. Robert Absurdis. Clara Harris, of course, absent. Exactly as I'd hoped. I didn't want a confrontation. I wanted closure. I moved through the backstage corridor slowly, sipping a mint tea someone had handed me. At 8 months pregnant, even walking the length of a room had started to feel like a statement. But tonight wasn't about comfort. It was about clarity. The room filled quickly, more than I expected. Press, industry leaders, local entrepreneurs I'd mentored, even a few young coding students whose emails I'd quietly replied to over the years. I took the stage a minute before schedule, not because I was eager, but because I wanted to speak before the air shifted. The lights dimmed just slightly. My mic clicked on. People often ask what made me start this company. I began, steady and slow. They think it was a strategy, a market analysis, some brilliant gap I identified. I paused. It wasn't. It was rejection. A silence fell, the kind that deepens when no one dares interrupt. I kept going, voice calm but my spine straight. The first product I ever made was mocked. I was told I was chasing nothing, that no one would ever want APPS for Minio. I didn't mention names. I didn't need to. But every time someone turned their back, I turned toward the work, and here we are. I reached into my jacket pocket, felt the familiar edges, pulled out the folded card, now from years in a drawer. I want to read you something. I opened it slowly. It wasn't flashy, no glitter, no cursive, just a simple birthday card from my grandfather. I believe in you, not someday, today. I looked up at the crowd. That card was the only voice I heard when everything else went silent. There was a pause, not dramatic, just full. Then I turned and walked toward the covered panel mounted on the stage wall. My assistant handed me the small remote. I clicked. The curtain dropped. Behind it, a mural, not of my face, not of polished branding, but a mosaic of my first notebook sketches, shipping receipts, patent filings, prototype pictures, emails, timestamps, all framed together. A wall of memory and truth. This, I said, my voice quiet now, isn't just my work. It's what I remember. I let the silence stretch one more beat. Then, to anyone who's ever been forgotten by their own, just remember you can still build something unforgettable. The room didn't erupt at first. There was just this long inhale, a collective tightening of breath. Then they stood, applause, loud, clear, prolonged. I didn't cry. I didn't bow. I just let them see me as I had always been, unhidden. Hours later, after the crowd faded, after the last thank you was said, after I was back home and barefoot in the kitchen with the kettle hissing behind me, my phone lit up. No caller ID. Then I played it on speaker. It was my father's voice, raspy, a little unsteady. "We didn't know you kept that note." Silence, no breath behind it. Then the beep. That was all. I stared at the phone for a long minute and whispered to the empty room. But I did, and I kept much more than that. I didn't respond to the voicemail, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I'd already said it to myself, to the child growing inside me, to the world that finally saw me, not as an echo of someone else, but as a voice of my own. That afternoon, through the launch, after the applause, after the silence of my father's voice on the phone, I sat at my desk. I pulled out the old notebook where I'd scribbled my first code. Pages attendant to the nights I chose myself. And I picked up a pen not to write a post, not to prepare a statement, but to write a letter I would never. It started with no greeting, just truth. You always thought I'd come crawling back. I didn't, but I did come forward. I paused, then kept writing, letting the words spill in the exact tone I'd never had the space to use with them. Measured, whole, not begging. You taught me about silence, how loud it can be, how sharp, and how sometimes it's the only thing louder than your disappointment. The page filled slowly, not with blame, but with the kind of honesty that made space around itself. I wrote of the birthday they forgot, of the beat app they laughed at, of the child I now carried and how that child would never have to wonder if they belonged. When I finished, I folded the page in thirds, crisp, neat. I didn't tear it. I didn't burn it. I slid it into a file labeled "No Longer Needed" and closed the drawer. Later that evening, James brought me a mug of tea, rooibos, with almond milk. He didn't say anything at first, just rested his palm against the small of my back. His touch was a quiet promise, a reminder that I wasn't alone in the world I'd built. I was scrolling through my inbox, hundreds of messages, some from investors, some from reporters, but most from strangers, from people I'd never met who wrote, "I needed to hear this. I thought I was the only one. My family erased me too." I hadn't posted for sympathy, but something deeper had happened. Truth echoed. The baby kicked under my ribs twice, then settled. I set the mug down and pressed my hand over the curve of my stomach. James rested his on top of mine. "We build new families," I said quietly. "Not always by blood, but always by truth." He nodded. Didn't speak. He didn't need to. 4 days passed without another word from my parents. But late Sunday night, just before shutting down my laptop, I saw her name in my inbox. Clara. No subject line. I hovered for a second, debating, then clicked. It wasn't long. "I'm not ready to say sorry, but I finally understand why you left." I didn't write back because I didn't need her to finish that sentence. Some doors don't need to slam to stay closed. Some just click shut. Quiet. Permanent. And that's enough. Monday morning, I walked into the nursery. The room glowed with the future I was crafting, free from their shadows. The rocking chair James and I built stood by the window. Books already lined the shelf, too many for a baby but just right for a home. Above the crib, on a narrow ledge, was the old card, the one Grandpa G's gave me when I turned 17. The only voice that had ever whispered, "I believe in you," when no one else had. I lifted it from the frame and read it one last time. The ink was fading, but the weight hadn't. Then I placed another frame beside it. I'd a new note written in my handwriting, for the child who was coming. You never have to earn your place here. You were born belonging. I didn't cry. I didn't need to, because some names get erased from family walls. Others become the foundation of something new.